One aspect that the public knows about autistic people is that they like to throw tantrums, which are actually called meltdowns, but you know that they know about them so much that they would put other autistics' meltdowns in public, am I right? Snark aside, putting up videos on autistic people without their consent is, to simply put it, embarrassing. That's how I'd put it. But it's not mere childhood embarrassment. Yes, I'm saying childhood because this often happens to children, but recording someone at the very low to show how horrible autism is, or how heroic people around them are, or just for entertainment purposes, is very humiliating, and it worsens the stigma that all autistics do are meltdowns. And to my personal experience, watching an autistic person having a meltdown makes me feel very bad. I just don't want to watch people suffer. But what are meltdowns and shutdowns? To make it simple, a meltdown is an autistic's way to respond to overwhelming things, whether they're physical, such as sensory overload, or mental, like anxiety. Autistic meltdowns involve a lot of physical movements, like kicking or rocking. Shutdowns are like meltdowns, but instead of being active, it's more quiet and unresponsive. Again, this is more on autism in media rather than talking about autism itself, so you should look up more about meltdowns and shutdowns from other sources, which can be found in the description below. I want to share some good ways to portray meltdowns and shutdowns. A good example would be Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor, who uses a meltdown as part of a plot point. However, I'm not going to talk about that, as the thumbnail suggests. A lot of Sean's positive depiction can be explained in the first episode, minus the comedy. I will, however, talk about Vladislav the Poker in What We Do in the Shadows, a comedy mockumentary centering around the lives of vampires living in a flat in Wellington, New Zealand. Apparently, based on my personal observation, he probably did a meltdown and a shutdown based on personal experiences, and because of its mockumentary nature, the film format uses pseudo-live footage, which helps with my explanation on a good way to film meltdowns. The following breakdown of the meltdown will be accompanied by the rage cycle from Asperger's Syndrome and Difficult Moments, Practical Solutions for Tantrums, Rage, and Meltdowns by Brenda Smith-Miles and Jack Southwick. The scene starts with the vampires of the flat getting invited to the Unholy Masquerade, a party that they frequently visit. Vladislav strongly believes that he would be the guest of honor, which hasn't been revealed yet. His mind was set on that assumption. Unfortunately, it turns out that the guest of honor was, spoilers because it's supposed to be the punchline, but I will reveal this early for the sake of explanation, someone whom Vladislav really hates, the Beast, thus challenging his rigid thought. This is when Vladislav goes through the first stage, which is rumbling. He trembles as he repeatedly says, "Okay, that's fine." His flatmates notice that something's wrong with him, and they seem to be preparing themselves to what will happen later. Vladislav seems to know that he's going through a meltdown, and he did the right thing someone going through a meltdown would do: flee to another room, away from his flatmates. Then he enters the rage phase, where we can hear him yelling and throwing things around, without being visible. I actually respect the decision of not visually showing Vladislav kicking around, because it looks as if the camera crew are giving respect to his privacy. His flatmates also didn't do anything to try and stop him, which is honorable. People shouldn't physically interfere with them when they're having a meltdown, except when they harm themselves, or others of course. I also like this statement by one of his flatmates.
Vladislav has just had a reaction to the information that the guest of honor will be the Beast.
I really enjoy how it's implied that Vladislav had a reaction instead of reacting, suggesting that Vladislav can't control his reaction or meltdown. Then comes the part where I'm pretty confused about. There's the last phase of the rage cycle, recovery. This is when the exhausted autistic person retreats and tries to relax. Vladislav laying on a coffin would count if this happened after the events of his meltdown, but due to the nature of the mockumentary, we don't know if Vladislav proceeded to lay on his coffin right after the meltdown. Based on his wishing that the camera crew would never see the Beast, this would take place before the party. Alternatively, it could be in this scene, where Vladislav has turned wrinkly and gray, basically immobile when his flatmates are about to go to the party. This scene could also be a shutdown, which yes, can be triggered by thinking about something that happened in the past. He could be feeling too anxious about meeting the Beast, triggering this shutdown. I commend how his flatmates are trying to give him solutions, like how he should try to rejuvenate himself, or how he should wear a mask. I also respect Vladislav's decision to not let anyone interfere with him and just do his mindless activity, which is bidding on a table on the internet instead of attending the party. So that's all there is to Vladislav's possible meltdown and shutdown. At the end of the day, if you want to film and publish an autistic person's meltdown or shutdown, make sure you get their consent to avoid humiliation. And autistic people, if you want to show your meltdowns and shutdowns, go ahead, be my guest.